watch your dark window. Do you sleep with sheets held tight? Do they keep you warm next to my cold pillow? Now you turn on the light, I feel something warm. It starts in my head and runs straight to my heart. When you cry electric tears straight through my heart, they tear that electric wire from my heart to yours. Still burns hot tonight. Your electric tears are the power from my life. They drive me back to your light. You're awake tonight. You call out to me. Our love is on still hold. Why'd we have to start a fight? You hold up your key and open your window. Now I follow your light. I feel something warm. It starts in my head and runs straight to my heart. When you cry electric tears straight through my heart, they tear that electric wire.
people are ready to begin again.
They're saying they're ready to go.
Let's find another light.
Okay.
Some sort of light.
Wonderful job so far. Hello, beautiful America.
Hi. Ooh, nice. He's looking quite nervous. You're glittering now. You're shining, babe.
Yeah, really.
When the lights go down.
Bill, the truth comes out when the lights go down.
Get your flowers, darling.
So we're lounging over here.
So, Lane,
I can't possibly lounge on it.
Lane, I think we're having some fabulous moments there.
No, we need to.
Yeah.
Oh,
Together, don't you?
no, white's not good either. Which one?
Okay, moving back here.
Wait a minute, my pretty, wait.
Second act, scene, garden at the manor house. The garden, an old-fashioned one, full of roses. Time of year, July.
Cecily, surely. Such a utilitarian occupation as watering the flowers is rather Malden's duty than yours. Especially at the moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray, open it to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays particular stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot quite be well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we rear together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence on him, Miss Prism. I am sure you certainly would. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think even I could have an effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure that I desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightly of 3-volume novels, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier years.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
Well, the good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Mr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble? This is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that, and not about my German lesson, when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not unattentive.
Oh, I am afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria, her pupil, any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I see you have no doubt at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a slight headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Miss Prism exits with Dr. Chasuble.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing before the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else.
Enter Algie, very gay and debonair.
He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I am sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I am not really wicked at all, Cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being good all the time.
Oh.
That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak with you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I have received on Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Oh, I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind reforming me some other time?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
And that's because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Oh, thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
Would you like a yellow rose?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Oh, well then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Tarthable. You should get married. A misanthrope, I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church is distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear Dr. Chasuble, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No, married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended upon. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Enter Jack slowly from the back of the garden. He is dressed in the deepest mourning.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance?
Still leading this life of pleasure?
Dead.
Your brother Earnest? Dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him! I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Earnest. He had many faults.
Is it so sad blow, though.
Oh, but it is a very sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
What was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to droughts. Will interment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful, or in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at the harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the Upper Orders. The bishop, who was present, was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Ah, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen all right. I mean, of course you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in the parish. I've spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear doctor. I'm very fond of children. No, the fact is I would like to be christened myself this afternoon if you got nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if you think the thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony be performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at this time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages of your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened along with the other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. And now, Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg that you not be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on.
Cecily!
Do go and change them.
My child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache, and I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about a half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to be, to me, particularly distressing.
My brother's in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd.
Enter Algy and Cecily hand in hand.
Good heavens.
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble that I have given you, and I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, You are not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here is disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be some good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit at the bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, I don't want him to talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit that the faults were all on my side, but I must say that I think Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Oh, well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see such a perfect reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Alger. You must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I've put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
His luggage. Oh, sorry.
His luggage?
Wrong person. Mr. Earnest's luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and put it in his room next to yours.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 suitcases, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon box.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lie you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
Oh, you're not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying for a whole week with you in the house as your guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress with such little result.
Well, at any rate, that is better than being always overdressed, as you generally are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, you conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden is utterly absurd. However, you've got to catch that 4:05, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for
I
you.
think it has been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. There she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, that I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does give you credit, Ernest. If you allow me, I will occupy your remarks in my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily. Ever since I first looked upon you, your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Oh, Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying until next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes. It would be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed a chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him, after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always that I would always wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderful good taste, Ernest.
Oh.
It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote almost 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
I can't see there either. Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But when was our engagement broken off?
Yes, of course it was broken off. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all, Cecily. I am very much hurt indeed to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a real serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, what a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling, with the help from others.
Oh, I'm so glad. You'll never break off our engagement again. Oh, I am so
Will
glad. Will you?
No.
I don't think I can break it off now that I have actually met you. Besides, of course, there's a question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
But, my dear child, you mean to say that you could not love me if I had some other name?
Well, what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you shouldn't object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it's rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are all called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all rituals of the church.
Oh, yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once about a most important christening. A most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter this proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. You can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Darling, come and sit here.
Okay.
No idea. Miss
Fairfax
says
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women who have been associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. It's probably pretty interesting stuff. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Hey, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
Thank you. I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Good. Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate. Does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I assume.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
It is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say they have not been in good terms with each other for a long time.
Oh, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems quite distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I am afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I am afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing a shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
My script is upside down. I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties. I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, that is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at the present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cecily looks angrily at her, takes up the tongs, and puts 4 lumps of sugar into the cup.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Cecily cuts a very large slice of cake and puts it on the tray.
Hand this to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling.
Well, wait a minute. Don't kiss me. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily, of course not. Could put such an idea into your head.
Thank you.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at the present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh.
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Oh, thank you.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
Is your name really John?
Well, I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
Gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There's just one question. I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Seth, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is indeed the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. None of any kind.
I'm afraid it's quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
Well, this ghastly state of things is what you call bun-bearing, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful bunberry it is. The most wonderful bunberry I've ever had in my life.
No, you have no right whatsoever to bun-berry here.
That is absurd. One has a right to bunberry wherever one chooses. Every serious bunberryist knows that.
Serious bun-berryist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunberrying. What on earth are you serious about? I have no idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to do, dear Algy, and a very good thing, too.
And your brother is a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was, and not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct to Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she's my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I just wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that's all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Oh, there's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How can you sit there calmly eating muffins when we're in this horrible trouble? I can't make it out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
Well, it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that's no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Oh, God, I suppose a man can maybe eat muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I thought it was perfectly heartless of you, under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
Oh, my dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I've just made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and I will naturally take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all I've ever been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was. So does Dr. Chasuble. It's entirely different in your case. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I have not been christened for years.
Oh, but you've been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so. So, I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite sure about never ever having been christened, I must say that it is rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You could hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself a severe chill wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements on things.
Oh, that is nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, you are at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served up to your guest? What ideas you have on hospitality?
Algernon, I've already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there is still 1 muffin left.
Third act. Scene, morning room at the manor house. Gwendolyn and Cecily are at the window looking out into the garden.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
It's the only thing I can do now.
Jack enters, followed by Algy. They whistle some dreadful popular air from a British opera.
Our dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn? Oh, yeah. Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems satisfactory, and a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But it does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon this subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
Oh, an excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people anyway. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
1, 2, 3. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me? You are ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes, Cecily. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage on which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good God.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on some influence of permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. I would consider it wrong, but of course you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I'm engaged to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, no. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is indeed somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death seems to have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed him this afternoon. I mean, the poor Bunbury, he decided to die this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury, well, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. The doctors found that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
Well, he seems to have had great confidence in the opinions of his physicians. I'm glad, however, that he made up his mind at last to some definitive course of action, and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally gotten rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding, in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday I had no idea there were any family persons whose origins was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Curvace Park, Dorking, Surrey, the Sporran, Fifthshire.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
Oh, how extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you'll be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see, though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune?
Oh, about £1 million in the general funds, that is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So nice to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £1 million? And in the funds? Miss Cardew seems to be a most attractive young lady, now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems as nature may have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
Yes, and after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, dear sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way a chin is worn. They're worn very high just at present. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I'm not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I never think is advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she becomes of age. The consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I almost say an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can a man desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak to you frankly, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He's an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on a very important question of romance, he obtained admission into my house by means of false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint of my Pierre Chadoux Brut, 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he's perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother. I never had a brother, and I don't intend to have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Oh, that's very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, any matter of importance.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again, but it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not legally come of age till she's 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women at the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she's been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned that she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Oh, of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate even waiting 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I am not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings, sir? Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? Oh, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just informed my pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am celibate, madame.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting there for 1 hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Square, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality, but the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby in the perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I had intended to place a manuscript of work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment, Gwendolyn. Wait here for me.
Oh, if you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Noise is heard overhead as if someone was throwing trunks about. Everyone looks up.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
Keep going. Oh, the suspense is terrible. I love it. Where am I? I don't know. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
There's a chocolate.
Joel. It seems to be mine. Yes. Yes, here's the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Here's the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage. An incident that occurred at Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother.
Ah! I am unmarried, Mr. Worthing.
Unmarried? I do not deny that that is a serious blow. But who, after all, has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly tell me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel, you'll have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a brother in the past.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
Oh, my own. Oh, but what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Oh, good heavens. I had quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
Oh, I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened, that's settled. Now what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot, at the present moment, recall what the General's Christian name was. But I have no doubt he had one. I mean, he was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years. And that was the result of the Indian climate, and marriage, and indigestion, and other things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's name was?
My dear boy, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, wouldn't they, Aunt Augusta?
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are right here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Generals, Malum, Moxbum, Magley, what ghastly names they seem to have. Marksby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief, Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant, Colonel, General 1869. The Christian names, Earnest John. I have always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it is Earnest after all. I mean, naturally, it is Earnest.
Yes. I remember now that the General was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Oh, Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out that suddenly all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia.
Frederick, at last! Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew! You seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Curtain!